We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, we thank you for the opportunity for us all to be here to try and do the work and the planning of the county. And we just ask for your blessing as we think through things and your guidance in everything that we do. Amen.
Okay, good morning, council. The minutes from the last meeting have been presented. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
Make a motion to approve.
Fred made a motion to approve.
Second.
Keith, did you make the second? Okay, any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Minutes pass. First on the agenda is our IT committee concerning Webex. Would that be Mr. Brown? Mike? Or Dan?
Sure, come on up. Good morning.
Good morning.
You guys asked for a breakdown of the price on the phase 3 of the Webex project. I believe you all have received that.
Dan, who sent that? Because I haven't received it.
Yeah. Well, some of you do and some of you don't.
Thank you.
So this is phase 3. This is finished out a project that we've been working on from the CARES Act expenditure. One of the main reasons I'm talking on this one, the biggest portion of the $73,000 is in my building. It's our large training room in the EOC, and I'm going to play devil's advocate on both these. As far as a training room, I cannot say that this is a need. It's a want. Because we can still hold training there, we can do stuff, but if we wanted to start hosting and if the pandemic gets worse and we want to do virtual training, then it's more of a need because of the microphone system, to be able to have a two-way communication with the instructor, the camera systems and everything they're putting in makes it a lot better. You can't really hold that by Zooms or Teams. You just can't do it. So as a training that I do host one major training every year. It's a read, interrogation, and interviewing class. It's in person normally, but we play by ear depending on what's going on with the health of the country. Now, as an EOC, I think this is very critical. Because an EOC, if it comes up and spins up, let's say that tornado went through Wells County and part of us, and we needed our EOC up. This is so much better than the Teams or the Zoom meetings. All we have to do is send an email to somebody, and I could have Kathy and Yvette in a private meeting. It's secure. We can do multiple things. We have 7 large screens in that EOC, and every one of them could be a different meeting going on if we had to. It's recordable. It's just so much more secure, professionally done, and an ease to do it. But how often are we going to use that? I can't tell you that. Don't know. Last time we had ease spun up, it was for 2 weeks. It was when we had the jet fuel leak in the river. So is it something that we have in case something happens, or we wish we had it when something happens? I can't tell you the quantity. I can't quantify how often we're going to use it. I can't do it. But if we need it, it's going to be nice to have. This is something that we've been working towards, finishing this this project out. For the other things, the Superior Court, it's just key. We use that every single day, and it works well. And these side conference rooms are so, let's say the prosecutor's dealing with a case and they need to talk, negotiate, the prosecutor can go over into the other room and the inmate who's in my facility, they can switch on to monitors and they can start talking and the court can continue its business with another case. And then when they're done, they can let the judge know that they're back up, ready to go. It just keeps things moving smoothly. Why is that so important now? Because look, we're more than likely we're going to go into red because of the pandemic. We're the only county in our area that's not. And when we go into red, I'm not transporting people out of my jail. It's not going to happen. Right now, we don't hardly transport anybody out because we can video conference. But when we go red, we're not moving people. And why am I not moving people? Because we moved somebody from, I believe, Jay County, and now I have COVID in my jail. We have 3 confirmed cases yesterday. So we're going to start locking things down. This allows us to continue doing business on a normal day-to-day operation. It's very important, and I'm speaking on the criminal justice side of things. We use this daily, every day, every day. It's very important to us. Community corrections, same thing. They don't have to come into the courtroom. They can do stuff from their office and be in court. The prosecutor, a lot of times now on the infractions and misdemeanor stuff, he doesn't leave his office. He does it from his office. It's becoming routine and everybody's getting used to it. And it's safer for everybody. And it's a lot more time consuming, less time consuming. The prosecutor's office room, the service complex, I think that speaks for itself. When we run over in the council meeting, where do the commissioners go? They go down to 125. And now it can be recorded. We'll be able to be recorded just like this to make a public record. It's just stuff that we're improving our services to our community. I really honestly believe that. I know, Dennis, you had questions about, well, what's the ongoing costs? The licensing that we have to do for, Mike, you purchased a bundle of what, 30 licenses, I believe? 26. We have not gone over that. And what is that, is that a yearly expense?
It's a monthly.
Monthly expense that we can work into our budget. The hard equipment cost, we don't know. We don't know how long they're going to last. I know at the jail, they're being used every day. Their superior courts are used every day. They might wear out faster, but that's up to me to put that in our normal budgets. And I think we can do that. We don't have to replace everything at one time for a huge cost. I think it's stuff that we can maintain through our normal budget process. It's so much nicer to use. Had an attorney call me last week, wanted to meet with his client. He's out of Allen County. He has an Allen County case. I said, you have an email and a camera on your computer? He goes, yep. So give me your email. That was at noon. At 3:30, he was talking to his client from our jail. And it saves me from having to transport him to Allen County, because all that attorney would have to do is go to the court and ask for a transport order, and then I'm having to transport that in. Don't have to do that anymore. So I would highly recommend that we continue with this project as we've started moving forward with it, and let's get it completed. And what we have it if it's needed, especially this EOC. I understand that's a huge number there. If it's strictly for training, I would say that's something we could cut. I really could. But the probability of us having to use something like this for an EOC, we're going to kick ourselves if something bad happens around here and we need our EOC and we don't have this, because it would be that much helpful for us. That's all I have. These gentlemen can speak on their behalf, what their offices can use it for, and the need and necessity and or ease of business.
So for community corrections, Webex has been a game changer. The pandemic really put a hurt on the number of people that community corrections was monitoring. At one point in time, we were up near 45 to 50 people at a time on home detention. And in the middle of the pandemic, with courts shutting down and so on and so forth, we were down into the upper 20s, and it was getting a bit scary. In talking with Judge Conrad, we decided that having community corrections be at court hearings would be a good way to be a face that's there, and to make sure that if there's a question from an attorney, community corrections could answer that question on the spot. Now, keep in mind, we're not here in downtown Decatur located. We're outside of town on Pickway Road. So I was sending my staff or myself to court every day whenever there were criminal hearings and sitting in courtroom. Yvette, Corey, you sat in court. You know, if you're sitting there in court, lots of times there's things happening that is a waste of time for you to sit there and do nothing else. And talking with Judge Conrad, he brought up Webex, and he showed me how to use the app on my phone, and showed us how to use the laptops or the iPads. And now my staff sits in court every day from their offices, myself included, on Thursdays. What's happened is my numbers have gone up. I'm now back up in the mid-40s again. Things are looking better. And it's incredible how we can be in court, an attorney has a question, and, okay, well, Stephanie from Community Corrections is here. Steph, can you answer this question? Yes. How soon can you get that person in for an intake? Yes, here's the answer. There's no time for them to get lost in the shuffle. In addition to that, we're also able to be doing multitasking, other work within our office, instead of just sitting in court, twiddling our thumbs when something isn't necessarily related to us. So it's been a game changer. What we aren't able to do at this point in time, or what we're not doing, is meeting with people within the jail and meeting with our clients through Webex. Because of the increase in cases, we just decided this week to go back to virtual meetings with our clients. We're not bringing people in unless it's for a drug screen right now, or if it's absolutely necessary because of technology that they can't meet with us virtually. So they do use Teams and Zoom, but Webex is so much better and more secure. And so it is a game changer. I see us being able to meet with inmates in jail. I screen every person for community corrections. I approve or deny them coming to our program. And so someone that's in jail, right now, my only form of communication is an email. And so inmates in the jail can email me, and they do, but not all of them do. And I don't have a way to email them. At least that's my understanding of the system, right, Dan? So I've got a guy in jail right now. He's tested positive for fentanyl 4 or 5 times on a violation. He's been sentenced to community corrections. I'm on the fence. I don't like to roll the dice with fentanyl too much. No, it's not a good thing, okay? But I'd like to ask him some questions because there is medication-assisted treatment out there that he could potentially get into that might deter his use of fentanyl in the future. I'm waiting for him to email me because when he emails me, I can ask him that question. With that Webex system, I can set up a meeting, call Dan or call the jail, say put him in a room. I'm going to meet with this guy, potentially get him out of the jail tomorrow. If he's willing to follow some recommendations. So us, Community Corrections, we love Webex. It's been a complete game changer, and we're hopeful that you guys will move forward with the proposal from the IT committee so we can utilize it even better.
Quick question, just to make sure I understand the scope of this. So we already have the Webex, right? Like we have the actual system.
We do.
And so what this is adding additional equipment so that we can access the system easier from different locations.
Basically, the small conference room 125 in this building is going to set up, I believe, with something like one of these and have a camera so you can hold meetings there, record things like that. The Superior Court probation conference room, that's the side rooms that we can get in. So yes, that's new equipment. Most of this is new equipment to facilitate it. I'd say the prosecutor's office conference room, it's not going to be this size of monitor, but it's going to be a wall monitor like I have in my small conference room. So yes, a lot of this is hardware.
It's to make it more, because I think you can use it, like you said, from your computer, or you don't have to have the equipment as long as you have a computer that has that on there. But this makes it easier because you have equipment permanently stationed in certain locations. Is that
correct?
Am I getting it right?
Designated location.
Yeah, and like for the courts, there's a directory, VA1 and Superior Court. He clicks those two and they come on and they meet. There's no email address that to be shared. Those are direct links that we'll have everywhere. But yes, that's part of the ease with that. Now, people who don't have the system, that's where you send them a Webex appointment, and as long as they have a camera on their laptop, iPad, or phone, then they can join that way for the people that don't have it.
So this 200, it's not to add the Webex because we have that. That's all the benefits you're talking about, but it's to make it more easily accessible from different locations.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
And Corey, this is what we tabled last month because they're wanting to use ARPA money to fund this.
Yeah. Okay.
Corey, just to clarify, probation's not getting new equipment, so Superior Court gets theirs for the jury room. There's, I'm guessing a large size, probably a little smaller than that, in their conference room in Superior Court that's gonna come to probation. And that's gonna help us be able to kind of use it a little bit more. But you're right, we do have laptops, but we don't have licenses for Webex for probation.
Judge, did you want to say something?
Sure, yeah. So one of the increases is for Chad Thurston's prosecutor's office to have a hardware license and to have the same kind of system that you all have here. The benefit of that right now is that when they, during any kind of hearing, initial hearing, right, Jeremy needs to speak with the defendant because they waived the right and have a conversation. He can do that by dialing directly into any of the interview rooms in the jail, much like you all can do from that white tablet right now. You can dial right in. The jail, how it works is no one has to accept, because obviously an inmate, we would rather not have to rely on them to accept the call, right? So that's how that system works. The way it does, the way we work with Chad right now, since he doesn't have a hardware, he doesn't have a license, my court staff has to create a call between Chad and the jail and link them together. Now we put it on mute, and the issue with that, obviously, from a legal perspective, is the court is having to facilitate that call, and that call also involves court staff, and there's a third party in there. It would be easier, and much like when Jeremy does it, he just dials directly, and you know that is a call between two people, not a third party. And so we kind of had to work around with the court staff facilitating that, and that just is an example of Chad. When it comes to probation, and also all caseworkers at community corrections, what's nice about any kind of hearing that they have is they'll jump in, and Ian and his staff have been jumping into hearings, which is handy to facilitate that conversation when there's a guilty plea. At the end of the guilty plea, there's home detention or whatnot, and the question is, well, how does all that work? It's nice to have a caseworker or probation officer in the courtroom to explain that right then and there. The reason I encourage them to remote into the courtroom is because of COVID. I have a tiny court building. I have a small doorway that everybody's walking in and out of. I have staff that works right up against that doorway. The less people that need to come in and out of court, in my perspective, the better. And so I have a private defense counsel. If they want to come in, my court will send them an invitation. They can come in. But with regard to the prosecutors, I've encouraged prosecutors in the PD's office that if they want to appear in court to do so remotely. Number one, I think it's just better for everyone. This time, I think that's what the COVID money was for, is to assist with these type of things. And I've been fairly flexible about allowing folks to do it and kind of embrace that. I even appear, like when I'm a special judge in Wells County, I've even used it to, we'll send a link to judge's staff over there, and I've appeared as a special judge in Wells County sitting in my Superior Court from Adams County. And so our county has been leading the charge on encouraging folks to use this technology that is all paid for by a grant. So that's part of the reason. I look at other counties. I look at Jay County's court building, and it's just set up differently in a way that I think is during COVID. It just is a little easier. It's just a larger facility versus the old library that I have that we kind of shoved the courtroom into. So that's, from my perspective, that's kind of the benefit. The other thing is, and part of this is I've requested, Circuit Court has the two side rooms that have two smaller units that are similar to the jail, to the interview rooms there. And I requested that we can put those in Superior Court before when I have a PD or a defense counsel that would like to have a private conversation with their client, they can do so from those rooms. I plan to soundproof them, and we're working on that's kind of my second step. But to get two of those smaller units so that folks can have conversations with their clients either in jail or someone remote. Right now I use the jury deliberation room. We have a unit much like you all have here. It's a larger unit. I don't think I need that big of one. And our thought from the IT committee was to move that unit up to probation, so and then to get two of the smaller ones for those. That's my thought on all of this. We've really embraced it. I think it makes sense, not only during COVID, but I think it is also an efficiency part for just any court system to be able to hold hearings right away. You know, if an attorney's running late in Mountain County, I just call them up on the phone, pull over, and I'll call you, and you're immediately appear. And then we're not delaying everything and trying to facilitate the system of justice so that it's not delayed. Anyway, my 2 cents.
Sheriff, can you quickly explain what these categories, I mean, we understand what materials are, professional services, preferred support,
I'm
room,
gonna have to defer
total
that.
room type, what does that mean?
Mike, can you talk to that?
Yeah, I can. When we tried to find a company to put this in, what we had before was we had a mismatch of all kinds of equipment, different software. No one knew anything about the software that we had. The hardware, we couldn't find any support. I asked the judges at the time, figure out if someone else is using it in the state and who they're using for support. We couldn't find anybody. So I went out when we had the CARES money, and I went out to a larger company, CBTS, and I put some requirements down that they had to support the system. If the system needed firmware updates, they were supposed to know when they were supposed to be done and actually provide the firmware updates. If there's any other kind of support as far as software or software updates, they should know when those should be done, and they would offer support to get those done, because my staff just wouldn't know. I mean, this is a different technology. This is like bringing a television studio into the courtrooms and into this room, because there's microphones, there's cameras, all that stuff is coordinated with this stuff. So there is a lot of support that needs to take place. And so I said, at least for the starting years, until we can get our feet underneath us and understand the system a little bit more, we're going to have super good support. So that's what this is. A preferred customer support means that they're going to support us year by year on this, and we could drop it somewhat as needed if we start to feel comfortable, but we have to get used to it at least at the start. So that's why that number is on the here. You can see that this preferred customer support contract is that. You can ask Sam, who's already done quite a bit of it. He just calls them up for their support, and you did one just recently, and they tell him, well, here's what you need to do to take care of that. There's no way my staff would know. We'd have to go out and we'd have to research it, and so that's important. The professional services are things dealing with training, and they have come down, they put people in for a week to train our people. They've also worked individually with some departments and said, here's some things that you can enhance your system with down the road. I think probation, they've already had probation and community corrections where they've shown an add-on onto the system that we can get later on to enhance it specifically for those two departments. So they're out there, they're researching it. Dan has, they've offered professional services for Dan where they've shown him, here's how other cities are using this. The ones that they've shown were actually very large cities. We probably need something more comparable to our size, but they did show how other cities are using it. And when they had something big happen, an emergency happening, it gives them ideas. That's what we mean by professional services. It gives our department some sort of ideas of here's how other people are using it. They bring those people on through a Webex, and they actually show our people, here's how we're doing that. And they're saying, well, do you have this department? Can they be on it? Well, yeah, we have them there. Hey, we got this is going on. Here's how other people in the country are using this for these departments. If we wouldn't be paying that, they wouldn't, obviously, they're not gonna do that kind of stuff for us and bring those people on and try and research it. So
We've had
we're paying up front for it.
We've also had a standing weekly meeting on Fridays at 10 a.m. that anybody in the county, if you have a question or concern about something, you can hop on to it and ask your questions. They deal with it right then and there. If they can't answer, they'll get answers back to you. So, and that's part of those services, like I said. I know Judge Kreiner has been using that a lot. I've hopped on every once in a while, but every Friday at 10 a.m., there's a web meeting with the provider. So that's very beneficial, and there's no, they don't plan on stopping that. So that's part of those services that we're receiving.
And I guess the grand scheme of things, this is phase 3 of 3 to finish it off. This has already been planned for, and all the research has been done. So we approving this final 315 with the ARPA funds would just basically eliminate the county paying for it down the line versus the grant.
Correct, coming out of general fund or our general budget stuff. But I think the recurring costs that will come to follow when this service contracts and stuff expire, if we need to, we negotiate, probably won't need as much service, and then we can budget those in our normal budget. But as far as a lot of this is hardware, and that's the expensive stuff, we won't have those costs anymore.
So I guess, Corey, you made the point last month that, it was a good point, that, don't want to nickel and dime it, but, this has been in the works, and now we have the opportunity and a path that's led us to here now, and now we have grant funds available to use. And I haven't seen or heard, I don't know about anybody else, but any large projects that are on the table, except for the broadband internet, but that's going to be taken care of by other means as a whole.
Yeah, just for those that weren't here last month, I guess the reason I have a little bit of hesitation, I mean, I like this kind of stuff. This is, to me, doing technology like this is the way to go. I mean, we save efficiency and time, and so I am 100% in favor of the concept. The question is just where it gets paid from that I'm kind of wondering. With the ARPA funds, one of the things that they said we can use it for is general infrastructure. One of those being broadband internet for our citizens. Now, the 7 million or so that we have is not going to cover internet for the whole county. But if we can use every penny we have and leverage it with the extra state resources that they're saying they want to put into it, plus anything that comes out of this federal infrastructure bill that also is supposed to do some broadband, I think that would be an excellent opportunity to really balance the scales between these big city jobs and being here in a small town. People can work remote. I mean, we're talking about something that benefits everybody equally. Having access to good internet is it. So to me, that's where I get kind of a little bit stuck, because I want to put every penny we have towards that if it's feasible. We need some kind of a feasibility study to figure out what would this look like. Do we have enough money to really leverage it and make a difference? How much would it take? And I don't want to, like you said, nickel and dime everything out, because we keep getting good projects that coming up, and then next thing you know, by the time we actually get to that point, there's nothing left for it. So that's where my hesitation is a little bit on that. I'm wondering if there's a project like this, if we could pay for it. We have a lot of accounts that can't get access for some reason. So like we can't get to them, I guess is what I'm saying. So like the 4D account, for example, or some of these other ones that we just can't figure out how to spend them because they're too restricted. Is this the kind of opportunity where we could sort of put all those together, find a bunch of those pots all over, get this thing paid for, everybody contribute in their piece of it, and then we wouldn't have to use the ARPA funds for it? I mean, it's going to take a little more head scratching to find it, but I know there's millions of dollars sitting in our accounts that are unused, and if we can use those instead of the ARPA funds, that would be a huge benefit to me. Someone's got to do the work to figure out, which ones can we use.
Would still be waiting to see if that internet project goes forward.
Right.
So it's still a hope and a dream type thing. Stand by and wait and see, and then if it doesn't come in this amount of time,
At a minimum, we know we have other infrastructure projects like the sewage district and water, some of those type of things that we can definitely help with. I just want to make sure we have all of our options when we go to make a decision.
Well, if something did come up, we could scratch all the other pots together for that too. I just think it's a good idea. We're bound to finish it. We have the opportunity now.
Yeah.
It's ready to go. We just have to get everybody here on board. I just hate to sit around and wait and say, well, what if this comes along, or what if this comes along? Then we miss the boat, and these prices aren't going to go down. They're going to go up.
Mm-hmm. These prices they have a quote from them for a certain number of days, or how long are these valid?
Probably till the end of the year, and they're gonna reevaluate.
Yeah.
The other thing that I wanted to bring up, what you just said, is so many times when we have to rely on outside businesses to give us, our community and people, internet stuff, because, we gotta understand that. And so they have all kinds of funds. And for instance, they have to match. Okay, so some of them already got some pretty sizable grants before COVID even hit, but they had to match 50%. So guess what they're doing now? They're already contacting us because we got ARP money. Can you help us out and put some funds in? Well, Corey, what are they gonna do with that money?
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna put it into their match so they don't have to match it out of their own funds.
Right.
And then on top of it, what do they do each month? They charge us for the service. And when I say us, it's not the IT department. It's Dennis Bloom's house, or it's your grandfather's house, or whoever it is. They're still getting charged for that amount. So these companies, they're out there. I've heard that they've contacted the school systems. Can you help with your ARP money? And what are they doing with it? Well, I just outlined it. So we got to be careful about trying to take our money. It would be okay if we could do that, and then we could say, but now don't charge our people at the end.
Right.
But they're still going to charge them. So if you got relation, Corey, and they can't afford the internet access now, who's to say that they're going to be able to afford it afterwards? How they're going to afford it is that price to go down. If it's $100 a month, it's got to come down to 25 or something like that. It's not going to happen because they got to replace that equipment as new technology comes in. And believe me, that equipment that they put up on the towers and so on, it's extremely expensive. And all you have to do is look at what we're putting in at the jail right now on the expense with the dishes and the towers and everything. And that's covering 4 places with that cost, and you saw what it was. So it's, I think you got good intentions and say we want to bring this out to the people, but we got to be realistic and knowing how business runs and how they make money and what are they going to do with that money. They're going to take it from us. It's going to go into their match so they don't have to match it. And then they're still going to charge us at the end.
Yeah, and I'm under no illusion that $7 million would get you very far.
That's going to take us nowhere.
It's got to be leveraged.
No.
Like you said, it's got to be some kind of leverage where if we can leverage with the state and with federal and with anything else. But, I know like for our business, we wanted to get good internet, brought in and they were like, well, to get the fiber hooked up, it's going to be $20-some thousand and you got to pay that. Now from here on out, you won't have to pay that much anymore, but you got a big startup fee and that's prohibitive. And it's like, if we can use some of this to sort of figure out some of that stuff to get those costs down and level the playing field. But I agree with you. It's not, you don't just throw money at it. You got to be really intentional that you do it the right way. So
And you've already committed with the company now. And what happens if that company goes under?
Right.
Or what happens if what they provide in a couple of years, you're never going to get that money back.
Right.
At that point. I mean, you've just invested in a company to help put it in. And what if they stink after a couple of years? Or what if they start to fold and they go under and then some other company buys them? Yeah, I've always been in the thing where I never liked trying to get, I mean, we have to get involved because of the police force and so on, that we have to have Verizon or AT&T and the cells in the cars to be able to communicate back in. Those cars are not with CFS. They're with the big boys that have the cell capabilities that CFS doesn't have. And so we have to rely on them because we can't do any of that. And, you know, we're not in the business of running fiber out through the community.
And Mike, this 315 is still valid quote as of today.
Yeah.
All right, I'll make a motion to accept this as presented, pricing summary, and use the ARPA funds.
I have a motion and a second. Dennis? Dennis, did you have something to say, or were you wanting to?
No, I'm seconding that.
Oh, okay. Fred, I got Fred as the second.
So John and Fred.
Yes. Judge, was there something you wanted to add real quick?
Maybe, you know, before the discussion occurs or whatever, whenever a vote might take place. I just can say this, I was walking over and I talked to Jack. This is my funny part of my presentation. I was talking to Jack, and I talked to the sheriff beforehand. If you'll notice, none of these items refer to circuit court, right? None of these things do. But you know why that is? Because Mike Brown and Jeremy Brown got things set up for me ahead of time, and we were involved in the first or second stage, which is really nice, and I appreciate what they've done. I think that there are two people that, there's a lot of people in this room that use a lot of forethought and really think ahead, and I really appreciate it. I told Jack I was gonna say, no way, you know, that, since I'm not getting anything, but I've already gotten mine, basically, is what, you know. Sheriff's like, well, you need to leave, that's what he told me. Anyway, but the thing is, I did get that, and that was something that happened without much thinking on my part, and I really appreciate what they did to facilitate that. The next thing I'm gonna say is, it sounded like, I'm not sure if Corey and John's positions, Corey was like, hey, let's try to look for the money somewhere else, maybe. And John was like, this money's earmarked already for this purpose, kind of, or it's not necessarily earmarked, but it's CARES money that would have to do with these kinds of things. And so I think those are the two positions maybe here. I'm not sure, they're shaking their head, so I think that is the positions they're in. I don't come to these meetings that often, and so I'm not as familiar with what's going on with that. But the only thing I would say is that to delay, you know, and try to force things into a situation much like Corey's position might be, like, let's look for other ways to pay for it. That's going to take a lot of time, and maybe it's worth the time and effort. But Corey said, you know, like, somebody will have to do that work. Anyway, I just don't necessarily think the delay would be a good thing, honestly. Like, I think that if there's money there available, we aren't going to lose the money that Corey's talking about. Like, that's not going to go away. Is that right? It's just we got to find a way to use that money in other places potentially. And then so what I'd like to reiterate is something along the lines of what everybody's talked about today. One, convenience for these other entities to have Webex. Like, it's so great to have it where I have it in the rooms and conference rooms that I have. But it should be more efficient is what I'd like to say. Like, not just convenience, like convenience, everybody wants everything to be convenient, but sometimes the money doesn't make sense. But it'll affect, like, if they get what they want, it'll affect all these different entities in a very positive way, for sure, as far as not just convenience, but from a manpower perspective, like for the sheriff who's having difficulty hiring folks, less jailers on the road. And then what I think that should ring true for you folks mostly is public safety. And that's something that we're all aware of, and I know council members are and commissioners are well aware of public safety and how that affects our community. And so the less inmates are transported, the less the jail's exposed to COVID, the less chance of someone running away from an officer, one more officer at the jail. So the jail takes guy down to the room rather than jail puts guy in car. It should lead to less cars eventually. And I saw unrealized things, but it's true. Like, I mean, I'm serious, like, especially in the big cities. Like, really, like, they use it even more than us, I think. Sam has done a better job of using it than me. I mean, he really tries to make it effective for everybody. Like Jeremy knows, I like to have the guys still on board. I think Sam's used it the other way. But it's just safety on two fronts. Less inmates out on the town, and also more jailers in the jail where they're supposed to be. So anyway, so like sheriff has transported in the past for us. Shane did before Dan. And sometimes they have to, but they're two deputy Eric does sometimes. But anyway, that's enough said about that. But I can see there could be some wisdom in using the money that's already kind of there for this purpose, because it's really benefited me, and I appreciate what Mike and both the Browns had done for us and our pool. It's nice. Anyway, thank you. Sorry.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the council? Move this to a vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you,
Thank you very
everyone.
much.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Next, we have Mr. Miller. He has a hospital update for us.
The board at this past month, and we discussed the request from council, the board would like to have the opportunity to talk to the county commissioners and ask them if they're also in agreement.
Wait, can't hear.
If they're also in agreement, having county council or county council member coming to the meeting. Since the hospital board is appointed exclusively by the county commissioners, the board thought that it was important to get the commissioners' input on this. And so we are meeting with them in February, and assuming that they say that's okay, that we could hold another meeting following that, have a county council member come in.
So there's a lot going on, sorry. So they're meeting with the commissioners in February, and they've extended an invite to a council member at a later date? Is that?
Once we talk to the commissioners to get their input on this also. Like I said, since the hospital board members are appointed exclusively by the county commissioners, they felt like they needed to have the county commissioners' consent and input on this also.
Would that be
Congratulations to you,
So is that meeting before our meeting in February, or will we know
Honestly,
the results in March?
I don't know. I was thinking it was February 7th, but I could be wrong. I didn't check my calendar to find out for sure when that is.
So that would be before our meeing.
Okay, if it is the 7th, like I
Would that
said.
be for a one-time meeting, or is it a standing position?
With the commissioners, we do that one to two times a year. is what we do with them, so.
Oh, for the council member to be a part of the meetings, would it be for just the one-time meeting, or would it be a standing, kind of go in the same meetings that the commissioners do, minus the executive meetings?
Yeah, I mean, anybody, it's their open meeting. Anybody can come to the meetings, so.
As far as the council member, I think we were talking,
You mean the hospital board, not the commissioner board?
yeah, for the hospital board.
Right? I'm not sure if I'm following you, sorry.
I guess,
He's asking if it's just, he wants to make sure it's for ongoing, not just one meeting.
Oh, sure,
Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, as far as the actual hospital board meetings that we have every month, anybody can come to those. Those are open.
Yeah,
public meetings.
I get that.
Yeah.
Just the,
The special executive one that we have is what you're asking, right? Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, and that's what the discussion will be with the county commissioners.
all right.
Okay, so we'll get an invite of some sort somehow.
I'll have a response after
Okay.
that, yes, so. Anything else?
Does anyone have any further questions for Mr. Miller? Okay, thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
today.
Thanks.
Next on the agenda is the sheriff again for a transfer.
This is a 1,000 fund transfer. The fund for perf and social security depending on how employees go, it's not an exact science, so we have to transfer $4,400 out of our overtime 1,000 line to those funds to pay off the Social Security and PERF. It's no new money, it's there, we're just transferring it around, but it's 1,000 series, so we have to come to you.
I'll move to approve.
Can we approve all of them right now?
Yeah,
Do you want to do them all right now? Just all the transfers?
I would assume.
yeah, I'll make a motion to approve all of them.
Second.
Okay, Corey made a motion to approve the transfers. Fred seconded. Any further discussion?
I noticed that there were a lot of house cleaning, I would call it, by way of perf arrangements. And I'm wondering why we're so short in so many accounts. I can understand for the overtime and what have you there, but there are numerous other accounts that are adjusting their budgets by way of perf payment. And I'm wondering how that's come about.
Really, I mean, perf and social security is really just an estimate. I mean, I take the salaries or what's in the line items and multiply them, but it's a total guess by the end of the year. We never, unless we budget higher.
Yeah, but how much overtime there's gonna be and all that stuff during the course of the year? For example, if the department has to plow snow 24 hours, or sheriff's department's out on emergencies or something like that, they can't satisfy an overtime budget, including the perks and everything with it, if they don't know how much that's going to be. It's just the best guess that you can make at that point.
Or if we have somebody that takes a big payout, we of course don't know that's gonna happen throughout the year, and we don't figure perf on that.
I'm just looking here, about $3,600 are all the perf transfers. Is that about right?
It's more than that, there's $1,000 just in
Also,
share.
Dennis, any
Yeah, there's only
like wage
like four
increases
other
we
ones.
do would increase the perf and the social security. So all the wage appeals we've done, anyone getting the stipends that we allocated, then those would affect perf and social security.
It's understandable.
And the other thing
Yeah.
is it's not, none of these are in county general, so I believe we had extra in commissioners, because I didn't have to do anything in commissioners to make theirs balance out, so it's just sales disclosures, park and rec, E911 and drainage maintenance and 4D, so it's in the funds outside of general at least.
And I think,
Corey and I did,
yeah, I was just about to say that.
go ahead, Corey.
I say Tony and I were talking earlier this week, or I guess it was I don't forget when it was, but here recently, and he was telling me that they were able to get a whole bunch of these transfers that would have been additionals, which is what I've been saying for a while. Let's put them into transfers. There's unspent money, so let's not appropriate new money. Let's use what's unspent. And so they were able to, they got that all figured out. So kudos to them for putting the effort into sort of push back a little bit and say, hey, find the unspent money. Let's not
Like
spend
Regina
it.
Bloom and myself, the last 2 weeks, that's all she's been doing is going through, okay, where can I mean, she said, this is last transfer, then a half hour later, here comes another transfer. Bree's getting tired of our emails, but it's moving that money around so we don't have to come for additionals, and it's there, we just gotta move it. So, where we don't spend, we'll make up for it, and that's basically what this is. Because like with ours, we have a lot of mid-year raises and stuff too, because of the seniority bumps, that if we don't exactly calculate all what that's gonna be for half a year, then it's gonna increase for another half year. That's where we just play this catch up, and we've always done it since I've been here. And we kind of expect to do that at the end of the year, and we use up some of that money that's not used elsewhere.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Might take up a little time while I'm here, very brief, it's just a heads up more than anything. The cars next year, the prices are ridiculous. They've gone up almost $10,000.
Each or total?
Each. I used to be able to get a Dodge Durango for under $30,000. Now,
Sorry, you have 6 coming next year?
no, 3.
Okay.
Mine only
We got
do 3,
6.
but I had 6 this year because
Okay.
I didn't get any last year.
All right.
So, but like a V6, which we normally don't buy V6s, we buy V8s, but a V6 is $38,000 now for Durango. A V8 is $40,500. So I'm just telling you, I have to order 3 cars, but I will be coming back to you next year for an additional pay the coverage because my car is $92,000. That's what's budgeted. We used to be able to get 3 cars for that, not anymore. And I don't know about this price increase. And ordering cars for next year is already shut off. You can't order any more cars for next year already now. So the cars that we'll order, we won't get till probably September. Because one plant is being shut down until April to retool, and it won't start producing cars until May, and they gotta then catch everything up. So just letting you know, I'll do the best I can, but I will be back to see you next year to make up the difference in the cars.
2 things on that, real quick. One, I think, Bree might have to correct me on how to do this, but if we can Bree, can you explain the encumbering process a little bit?
If I have money left over in cars this year, can we encumber that over to next year?
How's
So
that
to
work?
encumber, you have to have an invoice that's dated this year.
It's dated, I see. So you
Really,
can't just,
don't hardly encumber anything anymore. Like highway, Hume Bridge, like if we have any big projects that we started this year, they encumber, but
it's not just unspent and appropriated, it has to be unspent, appropriated, and an invoice.
yes, and the invoice has to be dated this year.
Okay.
If I can get an invoice for this year though, for that stuff, then we could possibly do that. Okay, I'll look into that because I'm negotiating with people right now, so.
Do you have money left
Negotiate
over
that
this year?
$10,000 down.
I'll have to look how much I have. I'm not so sure because,
Because you have to have money this year. to
correct,
encumber it.
but the vehicle we lost in the crash, I used some money I had unused to pay the difference of that new car, so we picked up another new car from the one that was totaled. I will look into it if I can, I will.
I understand some people are putting a down payment on a car before it's even built, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, with the companies that we deal with, being the government state bids, we don't have to do that, but I can get an actual copy of an invoice usually. Where'd she go? Invoice though for a car, they might require to have a VIN number, and I don't know if I can get a VIN number assigned to me that yet. I will look into that, and if we can encumber what we have, I will try and do that. I just want to give you guys a heads up. This is all coming out, like I said, the timeframe for ordering cars is already passed. Just some of the companies that we deal with order extra cars, because they know they're gonna sell them. So, that's all I have. Any other?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shannon, do you present to the council our meeting this morning, or does Corey do that? I don't remember what the policy states, who presents what.
It's up to you guys. Mary wants to come back for the next Thursday now.
You can, I mean, go for it, I don't care.
Book value, so that's
Maybe while she's coming though, I can just mention on the bigger topic that we were talking about.
Yes.
So we're having a dilemma with these wage reviews because, as you all know, inflation and wages and the pressure that it's having, what it is forcing all of these people to do, because the wages are getting a little bit out of whack with what they can compete with elsewhere, is they're all coming asking for to be their category to moved up to get the higher wage to be competitive, which we were talking this morning for an hour and a half or so, and we were like, hey, we got 2 different questions when they're coming to us. One is, where do you fit in the category? 2 is, are the wages now out of whack with the category? So we keep having people, for example, that maybe should be a 4, should stay at a 4, but they want to be at a 5 because they are not competitive anymore with the wages. So the pressure we're having is, do we either kind of break the system in order to get the wages where they need to be, or do we start having a bigger conversation for next year's budget on how do we fix that? How do we fix that?
I think you shift the wages for the categories, don't we?
That'll be a lot easier. I mean, yeah, it'll be a big dollar amount that we're gonna have to figure out how to fight that inflation in next year's budget. But we need to be aware of it, and at the same time, try and not let too many, because the problem is, let's say you push a bunch of people up to 5s just to fix the current wage inequity. Well, now when you fix the system, you're gonna undo all those people? Like, that's not gonna go over very easily.
The categories are specific to duties.
They should
and all
be,
that
yeah.
stuff, right? So
But I
it
mean,
makes
it's
more
just,
sense to move wages than it does move people in the category.
that's just the tension and the pressure that we're starting to get is
Right.
because they're getting out of whack.
Corey, you said they're out of whack. Is that to the marketplace
Yeah,
or
to the
by way
market,
of their
yeah.
job descriptions?
To the market. No, yeah. I think our category system is still fairly well intact, but just to give you an indicator, when we first started this whole system, I would say, because we said NE fours was like your basic deputy, and between fours and fives, there's about 50 or so people in those two. When we first started, I think we had maybe 5 fives and all the rest were fours, but it's just one by one, they're all moving. So now we've got 28 that are still 4 and 16 that are now 5s, and it just keeps, pretty soon, why do we even have a distinction between 4 and 5 if they're all trying to get there? And when you really dig in, the reason is the wage, not really the category. So nothing to solve today, but just put that in the back of your head that we're gonna have to be talking about that somehow next year when we do next year's budget.
You wanna go ahead?
Yeah, she doesn't text me back, so, we had a wage review meeting this morning to talk about 3 different job descriptions in the assessor's office. One of them used to be, titled data entry deputy, the other one used to be titled reassessment deputy. Mary felt that it was best because of some of the circumstances that they faced in the last couple of months/year, that if those 2 positions were the same and they essentially were cross-trained and they worked hand in hand to do the same duties versus being separate duties, which I wholeheartedly support. So one of them right now is classified as a 3 and the other one is a 4. So we're recommending that the 3 goes to a 4, so they're both the same. That a fair statement?
And then that one, are you gonna do both at the same time or
Well, I
just?
figured we could do one at a time. It's up to you guys.
This is agreed upon in the wage appeal.
Yeah, and same was in there, yeah.
So we need a motion.
Please.
Make a motion to approve.
Fred made a motion, Keith seconded, is that correct?
I think
Okay,
everybody
any
seconded.
further discussion? Those in,
But it won't be effective, there's no 144, it's not a salary ordinance, so you guys can approve the change, I guess.
So it won't be effective like
But
it
yeah,
will
she
be.
didn't, there was no 144 given to me, so their wages can't change until it will have to come in January.
Not next year.
So we can talk about it today, but she didn't, we
We
don't
want
have
to,
what we need.
was there a retro?
That's what it is.
discussed?
Yeah, the retroactive date that we discussed was October 12th. That's when the commissioners approved the job description changes. So,
For both.
okay?
And now you're just voting on the one, right?
yes,
3 to 4.
right,
And then the other position that we discussed,
hold on.
Yeah, we'll get it.
So we have a motion and a second on this position. I didn't hear any further discussion, is that correct, from the council? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Yes. Those opposed? Motion carries, okay?
okay. So the other one that we discussed was the position of personal property deputy. The recommendation of wage review is that that position be moved to a 5. Some of the history of the position is that that position has absorbed a lot of the duties that the township assessors did when they were still in existence, but when those were disbanded, that position absorbed a lot of that. That position has just absorbed a lot of work over time. So based on the categorizations that we have right now, we are recommending that that position go to a 5.
Make a motion to approve.
Fred made a motion,
Second.
Dennis seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
That one was also retro.
Yeah, our recommendation was retroactive until October 12th for both of them. Okay.
I think that's it. Shannon, thank you.
Thank you.
Mark
Yeah.
Okay.
That'll be on the list next.
Next thing, we have additionals. Tony, do you want to talk about these for us?
23, what's that right here? Veteran services is for a soldier burial, but just, you can't predict how many burials there are going to be. So they were a little short, and you can't not bury a military person, so that's what that additional is for. That's the only additional out of county general. The other two is lit economic development. That's for the Adams County Economic Development Corporation and for the hospital. And Stan, you might know, this is the normal payment that is made to those entities, I believe.
I believe so, yeah. I don't think
So that's, I believe that 275,946 is an annual payment. Mark might also know if there's a question on that.
Do we pay
This
them for?
additional with the hospital, for the 275,946.
So what, do we pay the
Is that
hospital
a
4
normal
times a year?
Payment that is made to them for EMS use, or what is that?
So that, if that would be a quarterly payment?
I don't know why that's an additional.
It really shouldn't be, right?
What was the last thing on the board under addition?
Personal health out of ARPA funds. Oh, I think Julie Marie was going to talk about that.
Oh, and that's regarding COVID tests being purchased. There's Bree. You walked out right when additionals were coming up.
Oh.
The hospital, 275,000.
Is that by design?
What is that? Rick?
Is that by design?
Oh, that's why you left. Fred's fault. Is this hospital? I asked you, and I can't remember.
The hospital, that's they get half of the CETA or the.
That's, okay, that's for the bond payment then. Okay,
I
so
knew
we're
there was
different.
something along that line.
It's just that we don't know the numbers of what economic development when we do the budgets the year before, so we just keep the prior year's numbers, and then every year we have to do an additional to catch it up.
All right, so that's on the bond, so that's how the hospital's financed, was through the 0.2% incremental increase in economic development. And then that money comes in, what, semi-annually to the county or quarterly? Monthly, okay. I think, but the bond payments are paid twice a year. So based upon, whatever's raised, what comes in, then that's what gets appropriated.
So
That's why they don't appropriate it at the beginning, because they don't know what it is. That's why it's shown as an additional. So it's not, it's money that's earmarked for the hospital for that bond payment.
So, but this is money, so this amount is just what is needed to finish making that second payment?
To make the second payment.
Okay.
Yep.
And in my defense, I couldn't remember what she had told me because I had a hell of a week. As a vet knows.
I mean, what threw me off was it listed as an additional, but
Right.
But you got 2 payments a year, and they have to be paid, and that's the source, so.
Julie Marie, did you find out any information concerning that ARPA funds? Why we were using those as opposed to other resources?
It's for testing supplies. Testing supplies are not the kinds of things you can just grab at Walmart or the EMS, EMT department has on hand for testing supplies. And I have, so far this month, they've used $770, and they anticipate continuing to need more. So that's why we have that. I gave you a draft of a proposed resolution for $10,000. I also made another one for $3,000 now that I know how much the cost they've incurred already. It's up to you as to whether or not you want to do a higher amount or lower amount.
But it's been advertised at 5, so we can't go over 5.
Go
At this-
over, but you
You
can't
can go over, but you can go
Right.
under.
Okay.
So I have something for $3,000.
And all these will have to be additionals again in January or sometime next year, because once December 31st hits, these additionals go away.
But at least as it regards the ARPA funds, you have to start over every year. So
So even if you pass the resolution and approve the project this year, if next year the funds are actually coming out, it's going to have to be advertised again.
Okay, so do I have a motion on these? Or
Make a motion to accept or approve.
Fred made a motion,
Second.
Fred, or John seconded. Any further discussion?
That'd be quicker.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so we did all the transfers, we did all the additionals.
All we would have is a salary ordinance, if you want to get that out of the way.
Okay,
It's up to you.
we have a few,
I think we have two salary ordinance. One is court security retro to 12/4 for the sheriff. The other one is part-time nurse. Because this is a grant and she's going to be starting to get paid out of this grant, 8108 fund. 8108 is a fund, and it's a grant that is helping to pay to vaccinate children.
okay, do I have a motion on this?
Motion to approve.
Dennis made the
Second.
motion, Fred seconded. Any,
Who made the motion?
Dennis? Dennis and Fred. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Tony, do you have anything
I
else?
just have one more thing that we discussed yesterday that, well, kind of discussed it. In the past, all council members signed a conflict of interest form. I looked in the policy, there is nothing, that doesn't have to happen. I just to verify that, I called State Board of Accounts and I talked to Ricky Helfner. And she said the only time that the uniform conflict of interest disclosure statement needs filled out is if you literally have a conflict of interest. If you have a conflict of interest in this form, it's filled out and we have to put it out on the gateway within 15 days. So one example of a conflict of interest, Mark, you'll remember, Doug had one because I think he sold eggs to, what was it, jail or?
Checked eggs
So-
to the jail, cheap, but he had to fill out a form every
Yeah,
year.
he had to fill out a form because he did have a potential conflict of interest, but that's the only time you really need to fill it out. So I felt like I would save council a lot of time by not having to fill all these out if there was no need to do it. So that's what that is.
Would there be, like, Mark, would it be a conflict for, I mean, we practice in front of the judges, which are from the county, is that an issue, or?
I mean, if you were a public defender, then I think that would be an issue, but you're not.
This is a private county, yeah.
Right.
Okay, anything else, Tony?
Nope.
Okay, Julie Marie, you have a bunch of stuff.
Okay, already handled the ARPA allocation, voted on that, so I have the resolution 29. Resolution, it's one they just agreed on,
It's 29,
29,
because the next one, if we do.
and this is for
Is there
3,000.
two there?
I know I sent out a draft previously, so you have to look at the wording of it. It said 10,000, that one is just 3. Okay. It's that time of year, and I was advised to, or asked to ask you to do the appointments for next year, since everybody else's appointment is going to expire before we get back into the next meeting. So we have Jeannie Atkins for the Adams Public Library Board, Steve Bailey for the Adams County Regional Sewer District, myself for the County Council Attorney, Don Kuhn for Property Tax Assessment Board of Appeals, and Toby Sprunger for the Alcoholic Beverage Board.
Julie Marie, have we reached out to those individuals to see if they want to serve again?
Yes.
We have?
And we've been advised, my paralegal advised me that she took care of all of that. They're all ready
Okay,
to
because
go.
Jeannie, last I talked to her, she said she didn't know.
She didn't
so
know.
she-
Okay, well, as a-
And then Toby said he wanted to be asked every year, not just automatically appointed to it. So was he asked as well?
I believe that he was. Brooke reached out, Brooke was advised these people are ready to go. So I would assume that that is the case, but don't quote me on that directly.
Okay.
But these are the appointments for this
I
next
believe
calendar.
Angie in our office also reached out to all these.
Okay.
Motion. Motion to approve.
Fred made a motion, Kathy seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. So this one is ready for us to sign, or do we need to vote because it's a different amount than what was on?
It's a lesser amount than was advertised, and you can adopt the lesser amount.
Okay, so we don't need a motion for this?
No,
Okay.
you just need, but we need it for the paperwork for the arbitration.
Okay.
I sent you another email. The highway fund was separated into two funds by SPOA earlier this year. Designated fund, a restricted and an unrestricted fund. Not sure why that was done, but they did that. When they previously, the highway department received and kept all interest on the account that they operated using their funds. When it was split up into two accounts, 1176 and 1173, restricted and unrestricted, for some reason, only the 1176 account was receiving interest. The 1173 account has its interest put into the general fund. They have simply asked that they can go back to what they had been doing and be able to keep all of their own interests. So I have a proposed resolution simply indicating that the 1173 fund, which is now being deposited, the interest being deposited into general, stays with the highway and is deposited into the 1176 fund.
How much money is that? So I figure out.
That's my question. Do you know how much money is it that the highway gets in interest in the 1173 that they're asking to keep?
Oh, no, I don't know, because they haven't been getting.
How much are they getting on their other one, just as ballpark?
So this year, they've got $10,887.43 in interest in 1176. That is only on the balance of 1176. So when MVH monies come in to me each month, I have to divide it in two, and half goes into 1176 and half goes into 1173. And whenever this started, I guess it just really didn't cross our minds that they used to get all their interest on their balance. Well, since the state started making them split it, they stopped. They started getting less interest, and they couldn't figure out why, and it was because it wasn't being figured on the total. But 1176 and 1173 is added together by the DLGF for budgeting purposes, something like that.
Okay.
It's just they have to be separate funds for the state.
So $10,000 worth of interest earned during the course of the year, and they apparently missed out on half of that because of the split. And they used to be able to get that half. So they're simply asking that they be able to keep the interest earned on their own account. So.
Yeah, I make a motion that they get it back, however you gotta
Motion to
word it.
transfer
Yes.
the money back, the interest earned back into 1176.
Is that a
Will we have to
resolution?
do that every year, or is this a one-time solve?
Thing,
Okay,
it authorizes the auditor to do that.
okay.
And that's a resolution? Julie?
Yes.
What
Okay.
resolution number is it?
We just did 29, so this would be 30?
So John, your motion is to approve resolution 2021-30?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Fred seconded. Any further discussion?
I have a question regarding resolutions and policy. When we adopt this resolution, will it be incorporated into the department's policy that this is going to happen? Because I think 2 years, 3 years from now, resolutions are going to be shelved somewhere, I'm not sure where. But who will remember this by way of what we did today?
The auditor's office would remember it because this will authorize them to make the transfer of any interest into their own account rather than the general fund. So basically, it's an administrative instruction from the fiscal body to the auditor as to what to do with them.
But shouldn't that also be a part of, in this instance, the highway department policy?
I'm sorry?
Shouldn't this be part of the highway policy by way of what they do with their funds? So that the next highway director can look at policy and see, well, this is what we're doing.
No, so we already have one resolution that tells, like, the treasurer's office and me where the interest goes. So Kathy figures the interest every month, and there is figures on the first resolution that says how much, the funds get. So like county general, all of our rate-driven funds and our 4D funds and our health insurance fund get the interest right now. So if you're not in one of those funds that is spelled out in the first resolution, the interest comes back to general. So it's not really a highway thing. I mean, yes, they get interest, but it's not part of their policy. It's just.
They're one of the funds that is to receive interest on money that they have on deposit. And highway funds, is money that is coming from state reimbursements, gas tax, license plate fees, and all sorts of other revenues that are not property tax driven revenues. So the logic is that they should receive the interest on the funds that come to fund the highway department. And that's why it was set up that way.
Okay, Fred made the motion. Who seconded? Did we get a second? Kathy seconded? Do you have another question?
No, she seconded it. I seconded it.
Any further questions or discussion? Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. And this would be resolution 2130. Kind of jumping back, again, we have proposed resolution 2021-31. That would be a schedule of the meetings for the Adams County Council for 2022. It follows the historic pattern of the second Tuesday of every month, except for the public hearings and budget hearings being the second week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in September.
So if we approve this, do we have to do the 3 days? Because I don't think 3 days are necessary this coming year.
That gives you the time, it lets everybody know we're gonna do it for 3 days, but if it's done in less than that, it can be done.
Okay, so. this one-
Whatever it takes, it takes. This is just your maximum.
So one thing I want to throw out there, though, would be possibly considering moving the budget time to August, because during the week in September, there were conferences going on, and that's why we had issues with getting some of the department heads, because that conference is always that week. So I don't know if you want to move it to August and then have the public hearing in September, so it doesn't conflict with conferences, and kids will be back in school during that week, so parents will be here, department heads. So just something to consider.
I don't know, honestly, off the top of my head, with all the hoops that we all had to jump through getting there. I would have to check with the LGF to see if August would be too early for us. I just don't know. But if we don't have everything advertised and have all the time to do that, then we may have to figure something else out if it's too early in August. That makes sense.
I guess the one thing I'd like to see with this whole thing is, and I don't know how it went in previous years, but a lot of the questions and anything that we have kind of be worked out ahead of time. So we do have it done in one day. We just need to get that preliminary stuff done a little quicker.
I mean, I think if we can figure out on our end how to basically say the broad stuff like, here's where we want the budget to end or whatnot, and we can tell these department heads, here's the amount that we gotta get it in, and we can really stick to that, and they can stay under it, then, yeah, that'll eliminate almost everything at that point, because it's like, as long as you stayed in it, there's not much that needs to be reviewed here, and if there is, we can ask those small questions at that point.
We had a lot of downtime this year.
We just have to plan, we have to put more energy up front, deciding the parameters, let them decide the details.
Well, so do the department heads. They should know, or do know, beginning of the year or mid-year, whenever, hey, like Sheriff just said, plan on this. So I already know that's going to be a line item in his budget. And then that can be discussed throughout the year, or you have worst case scenario with the meeting before the budget hearings.
But the department heads also need to pencil us out for those times that we have budget hearings, so that when we have questions, they're available, as opposed to being at conference or having conflict in scheduling. We've already established almost a year in advance what our schedule's going to be. And that's a lot of the downtime, because we couldn't get the department heads in. They'd already scheduled other things around that they couldn't come before us.
Well, what I'm getting at though is those questions being answered before the hearing.
But I enjoy listening to what you have to say and what questions you have, because I might not have thought of that. So having that open dialogue, I think, is beneficial for all of us learning. So what do we think about these dates?
Just
I
to
think
go
all
out there, we met with we are required to meet with DLGF, and we have a meeting on the budget. This year that was held, I think, towards late July. And then from that discussion, you have to advertise, I think it's 2 weeks out or something like that. So doing that in August is gonna be pushing that. I don't wanna see us get in trouble and try to do it too early. I would have to ask DLGF if that's possible, to be honest with you.
We could approve it as it states there and then change it later too, right?
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah,
If I find out that that is fine, then we can do that. I just don't wanna, there's just so many deadlines that you have to meet. So,
yeah. And I'm not opposed to any date. I'm open. So if it needs changed later.
I think that makes a good point. It's incumbent upon the department heads to be here in a timely manner and schedule accordingly. So the sooner you pass a schedule to let them know, you'll need to make some room on your calendar this day, or this day to be in front of council. You must do that. If they have all this time to get their schedules organized, there shouldn't be an excuse.
And budget has always been the second week of September for at least the last 10 years.
I know
It's always the second week of September.
I mean, I don't know that we want to tackle all this at the moment, but when would be a good time to say, like in June or July, when would be good for us to meet and have kind of that more higher level, like, we got to have our ducks in a row this time, but to say, here's where we want the budget to be, here's where we want the tax rate to be this year, here's what we want, set those high level things that we can then tell the department heads, here's your number, figure out how you want to do it. So if we do that pre-planning, we won't have to do as much work on those days. So like timeline, and maybe we don't know that right now, but I mean, would that be good to do that June, July?
Usually budgets are supposed to be turned in to me by June 1st, I think is what I usually put.
So we need to be before then.
Usually June 1st, but I mean, that's, I fit in entering budgets and getting the paperwork done for budgets in between everything else, so. I usually set my deadline whenever DLGF contacts and say, hey, we're meeting on this day. I know I have to have stuff in the gateway, so when we sit down, I sit down and meet with them, they know our numbers at the time.
And so you're
Maybe
saying,
you put in August.
but department heads are due to us. You said they turn into us by June.
1st.
So we need to have our broader parameters before that so that we can tell them what to budget.
You can, I mean, we don't get the information from the state.
I mean, it'll be estimates, but as best you can, we can say, hey, here's where we want it to be, and then that's what you use the rest of that time to keep updating it as you go. So when do we send it to them usually to say, start making your budgets?
Usually the auditors come to you guys usually in April to ask how much of a percent or what kind of changes you want in the budget, and then I send that out in usually May, tell them it's due by June 1st.
So that almost makes me think that April then, when we're having that discussion about the raises, we should just broaden that discussion then and decide at that point, what are we doing for everything basically, and try and have a big picture. Then that way we can tell department heads all one time, here's your raises to work on, here's your whatever. I mean, I don't know what you guys
do a
think.
But we
couple
just
work
gotta remember,
sessions
we still wanna advertise high, you still gotta advertise high though. So we can't go to like, kinda like what we did this year was like, well, hey, do this number, but then we ended up I ended up changing the budgets like 2 or 3 times to where I had departments calling me and saying, I didn't turn this into you. So then we kind of are like crossing the line of, we're asking departments to do a budget, do we even want the departments to do the budget? Because, I mean, they turned in a budget this year that I ended up changing. So then they're calling saying, well, I didn't do this, so then, I don't know.
Well, it's essentially what they're asking for and what we approve are different anyhow.
Not you, like, they are given a budget they're supposed to fill out, and that's what they did this year, but then I went through and changed them anyways, and then when it came to you guys, you know, say I had department heads that called me and they're like, I didn't turn this in, where did you get these numbers? So then it's like, we're having them do something that we're not gonna use anyway, that you guys didn't wanna use anyways, until I changed it, and then it came to you guys, and then they had to be changed again after budget hearing. So there were some budgets that was changed 2 or 3 times without the department head ever even having a say or even know.
Well, I do think if we can front load the high level stuff where we can figure out, we're not gonna get in a position where we get to the end of the 3 days of budget and go, where did we end? You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you're in a position you can't do anymore. Like we wanna start with a little more framework than what we've had. So I guess that's what I'm asking is, when do we wanna talk about the framework? It seems like April's what's gonna have to be, and I realize some of your numbers will be estimates at that point, but I mean, unless you guys have a better idea.
Are we trying to shorten the budget process or change the date just because of change? I think the intent was to shorten the length of time instead of 3 days, for example, in September. Wouldn't have anything to do with changing the month that we do it in if we're going to shorten the time to 2 days, for example. And
Yeah, that's a whole different, she's just saying that because she's having trouble getting people to come in for department heads. But that's not what I'm talking about.
We'll probably have to start talking about it in April, May, and.
Yeah, I guess for today though, do we need that? Do we
Today
want
we
to
just-
set it now so we don't have to advertise it later, or do we want to
You don't
just?
have to advertise that.
We're
The
not
only
sure.
advantage to it is we wouldn't have to pay to advertise again if you decided at a subsequent meeting.
So usually you guys just do that in your April meeting. The auditor brings up and asks what you wanna do as far as the increase in wages, or if you wanna make any like 2, 3 or 4,000 increases, like, it's just part of the meeting.
Yeah,
That doesn't get out, the only thing we have to advertise is the August meeting and the September budget hearing, like, those are the 2 meetings, and then in October, when you adopt the budget.
everything else is just leading up to that point.
Yeah, that's all you
why
just
would
do.
we change
So
that?
if you approve this, then we go from there.
Why would we change it then? From September to another month?
Well, I think it's
because
a
of
different question.
conferences and department head
That's the amount
schedules.
of work to do.
Right. She's just saying that some of the department heads have trouble getting to the September meeting.
True.
And also, the public hearing in September happens before we've even had our budget hearing. So public comment, we had a public comment, we had a question that we couldn't answer because the budget wasn't even done. We hadn't even started on it yet.
Yeah, I do think that's supposed to be the other way around. I think that it's supposed to be at the end, after we've made the budget and given the public a
And
chance to
unfortunately,
comment.
we're not alone in that, that's every county in the state. I mean,
We're doing it by what the calendar says.
We have a resolution before us then.
Resolution 2021-31 sets the the dates for 22.
I move that we adopt the budget, the calendar for council meetings for 2022.
I have a motion.
Second.
Fred seconded.
Dennis and Fred?
Yes. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
And last but not least, we've been working on the council policy and procedures manual. I gave everybody a copy of that. I have highlighted in yellow anything that has been brought to my attention, made requested changes to it. So right now, what we have is general information on membership, powers and responsibilities. The mission statement was changed and added. The vision statement was changed and added. Under terminology and acronyms, I don't believe it's on your draft, but a request was made that we add the current Adams County lit rate for each of these different divisions. So I went ahead and included that one, if you'd like for me to keep it included or not. Currently, certified shares is 0.6, economic development 0.4, public safety 0.25, property tax relief 0.374, special purpose is at 0. I also have in there community corrections lit. The 2019 statute number 6-3.66-27 allowed for rehabilitation and confinement lit taxes for that, but it can only go into effect if there's a passage of an ordinance. There's never been an ordinance passed in this county on that, so I'll go ahead and just X that out, so that wouldn't be included in that. Adams County total lit rate is 1.624, Indiana total lit range 0.5 to 2.9, so we're still below what we need.
Jean Marie, when
Yes.
did that, because my draft doesn't have those percentages. When did you
I
send
did,
it?
I added that afterwards pursuant to somebody else's
Oh, okay,
request.
okay.
So I can include that in the final draft if you want that. I'm just giving you that information now
Okay.
because that can be.
Yeah, I was looking for that.
If you wanted. Procedure, added a section indicating the procedure section and what all of that means. Under boards, I went through and made one notable change. With regards to the boards, the council has the option to put people on boards to become more interactive with different departments and committees and things. It's expected that council members will do that. However, there's no statutory mandate or requirement for it. So I softened the language to be able to make it flexible so that people could substitute for one another, go to as many as they could. I changed the last section in there saying renewable appointments can be made annually in January for 1 year in duration, or the Adams County Council may designate a council member to attend specific meetings of the following boards and committees. And then I list all the boards and committees. And you've noticed that beside each one of them, I've added the frequency of the meetings, and in time for the January 1 meeting, what I'm going to do is verify what their schedule of meetings is for the year. So if anybody is interested in signing up for that particular board, they'll understand what the specific requirements and commitments would be and make their decision accordingly. In this list, there were 2 committees that don't seem to be occupied by any council member presently, and we haven't been able to, frankly, even ascertain what exactly they are: the Dispatching Service Committee and the Communications Committee. So I would propose just eliminating those 2 from the list. The last thing that I added that was significant was inclusion of some details as to the Wage Appeals Committee, Wage Review Committee. That's something that's relatively new, and I thought that it probably should be in the policy manual. It was suggested by one of the members that we do include some information, but not so much that we have to constantly be updating it, just enough that it can be referenced in an administrative policy manual if somebody wants more details, but it does at least give the general structure of the process. So that's what I have thus far. I'm open to comments, criticisms, corrections.
You said those percentages you were mentioning are in a different draft?
Yes, I scribbled those in.
And that's our current rates?
These are the current rates for Adams County, and they haven't changed since, I believe, 19. So they've been the same for a little while.
Okay.
If you want to not have them in there because they changed,
That's,
or if you would like to have them in there and update the policy manual every year, that's your call. I just have that information.
I guess percentages could change, probably will. The only other thing is the IC codes could change, probably won't for a long, long time.
Right.
Just to keep it standard and easy, so there's less maintenance for somebody, whoever has to do the final draft and get it loaded. I'm sure that's probably going to be you. But for simplicity's sake, I don't see a reason. It's good information, but just less work. If somebody really wants to know the rates, they could be found. Just my suggestion.
I agree.
So you want to keep the rates in there or no?
No rates.
I like having the rates in there.
Deal.
How many new
That's fine.
council members, how many of you know what those rates are? Or
That's
is
fine.
this, if you're giving it to new council members that come in, they have that information, as opposed to trying to figure out where do they find it?
I think that's a critical point. To be informed is what the policy is all about, and that's why I think it should be kept.
That's fine too.
I rescind my comment.
We should just label it the Adams County Council Policies and Procedures Manual 2021, and then for next year, 2022.
Yeah.
And that way we know what year it is.
Sure.
Because it could change every year.
Any other feedback or questions, changes?
I think you should be commended for the work you've done. I know it takes hours and hours of work to do that, not just to review it, but to codify the source of the reason for why we adopt that policy. And I think you did a great job.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I agree.
Thanks, Julie.
Certainly. If everybody's okay with this, I can make the changes that we've just discussed, and we can indicate that it can be adopted and approved as of the January meeting.
Make a motion to
Second.
accept.
Okay. I will have this ready for the January meeting.
Awesome, thank you. Do you have
That's all
anything,
I
Thank
have.
you.
anything else?
No, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Is there any, I don't have my agenda in front of me, is there any further business?
I've got stuff for county
Okay,
attorney.
okay.
So at the commissioners meeting this afternoon, or this morning, whenever we get ready or get started, they're considering an ordinance to change office hours of county departments from 8 to 4:30 to 8 to 4. The reason being now with the implementation of timekeeping, we essentially have an 8.5-hour day that we're trying to make sure that people work no more than 8 hours. And that creates some issues for accumulation of overtime or comp time in the system. As it stands now, without having the timekeeping system, that is, you've had people using their 15-minute breaks to take an hour lunch. And then we get into some issues sometimes then with accumulating overtime or comp time, in most cases, comp time. So the commissioners have met over the last 4 to 5, 6 weeks, have considered a lot of different options. One of the options that it looks like would really help alleviate the accumulation of comp time issue is to go to an 8 to 4 schedule in county offices. A lot of other counties do that as well. So that way you're working an 8-hour a day instead of an 8.5 hour day. It would be 8 to 4, and employees would have then a half-hour paid lunch. And that would be that would keep us in line with what we're doing now as far as time.
Are other counties only up until 4?
A lot of them are, yeah.
There was a survey that went around probably 4 or 5 months ago from another auditor, and of the 40 to 50% of the counties that responded, about 80% of them were already on 84. And just to be clear though, this is not going to completely eliminate comp time or overtime. This is going to eliminate some of the opportunity to earn it within the week. So it's not like we're going to see the numbers go to 0 overnight, but for example, yesterday, I wasn't able to take a lunch, so I earned 8.5 hours that day because my schedule is 8.5 hours. So I worked for 8.5, well, I worked for much longer than that, but I worked for 8.5 hours yesterday because my schedule is 8.5 hours, just because I didn't take a lunch. So if I do that every day, by the end of the week, I'll have earned almost 4 hours of comp time every single week. So that's the major reason. So it's not going to go to 0. It's not that you guys are going to see that, in 2 months, nobody's going to have comp time, but we're just kind of eliminating the opportunity to earn it within the week.
So citizens have to have their business done before 4 o'clock instead of holding department heads accountable and having them monitor their employees.
Well, that's kind of a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, I can hold Brad accountable in the highway department, but it's harder for me to hold Ed accountable, and I'm not picking on Ed, but it's harder for me to hold an elected official accountable. And the issue is that once it happens, and I can't take it away. So even if the department head does hold their employee accountable by, let's say, Wednesday or Thursday of that week, or let's say I catch it by Wednesday or Thursday of that week, that they've skimped lunch every day, they've already earned the time. They've already worked the time. They're expected to be here until their schedule ends on Friday, unless they have some kind of other accrued benefit leave to take off. I can't take the time away. I have to give them the hours earned for that time worked. So, once it's happened, and I can't change it. So, with the appointed and hired department heads, absolutely, we could try to hold them accountable more so, but elected officials is where we're going to struggle.
So what impact, or I guess why, this feels like a very commissioner type thing. Whether we agree or disagree, what do you need? You're just telling us, or
We're
do
just
you
notifying
need?
you.
Okay.
Just letting you know.
What if someone works, you're going to pay them through the full 8 hours for a lunch time? What if they work through their lunchtime? Does that qualify them for comp time?
No, there's no additional credit for working through a paid lunch because they're already being paid for it.
Does that expose us to a legal problem?
But being paid for
Being
time
paid
worked.
for it.
So not as far as I'm aware. The FLSA does not require that we offer any type of break period. It does specify, however, that if there is a break offered, it has to be paid or unpaid depending on the duration of the break. So we are under no legal obligation to offer any kind of break if we don't want to, but if we do, it has to be paid or unpaid depending on the length of it. We are within our right to offer a 30-minute unpaid lunch, but to the benefit of the employee, we're offering a 30-minute paid lunch because they get 2 paid 15-minute breaks right now. So employees are still going to be working 37 hours and being paid for 40, just like they are under the 8 to 4:30 system. But what we're taking away is that extra half hour that's unpaid, which is the opportunity to earn comp time. So even if an employee takes a 45-minute lunch, they're still going to earn 8 hours and 20 or 15 minutes every single day. So it's not just about the 30 minutes, it's about the full lunch period. So we're just notifying you that this is something that the commissioners are discussing.
This is actually a commissioner function, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, they're just an FYI.
Yeah. Just tell us.
I have a question just in general. What if the person leaves, like it's a clerk, receptionist, and she leaves during her lunch break? She's still paid on company time.
Yeah, we haven't quite figured out if we're going to require the employees to clock in and clock out for that 30-minute paid period yet.
Just to relieve them of.
Right.
Other thing, and you may have seen this, the clerks, Jim Vogelweed, the clerk, has been working on this for some time, and that is the reorganization of election districts following the census. The The clerk is responsible to go through all of the precincts, and they have to organize. You're supposed to try to keep your precinct blocks so that they're within a certain deviation. They're not supposed to deviate by more than 10%. And so the council or the commissioners have reviewed this with the clerk. The commissioner districts are pretty close, and so they're not making any change to the commissioner residency districts. And these are the residency districts for commissioners and council. And so you have to reside in the district in order to run for office. The at-large are voted on county-wide, and then the 4 district seats are voted on just in the population within their district. The current county council districts are out of the deviations pretty substantially. The one change that can be made to bring those into better deviation, there were several options that the commissioners looked at. And the one option that leaves things so that it doesn't mess with where everybody lives right now is to take Kirkland Township out of District 1, which I think is Fred's district, and that would be added to District 3, which is Corey's district, and then everything else stays the same. That would keep City of Decatur would be Keith's district, and obviously then south would be Yvette's district with Geneva's. The only change is Kirkland moving from District 1 to District 3. And that balances the populations out as close as we can get without making a change. That would mean one of you couldn't run for office based upon current residency. So I just wanted to give you that information. The commissioners, as the executive legislative, adopts that ordinance to make that change, and they plan to do that this afternoon.
And that'll be on the website within a couple of days, I imagine, the updated districts.
What's that?
The updated districts will be on the website in a couple of days.
Yeah, and then they'll have to prepare new maps.
Mm-hmm.
So they adopt the ordinance. That has to be adopted before, I think, December 28th. And so then they'll have new maps after they adopt the ordinance, and then the new maps will be attached, and those will go on the websites, and everybody knows, as far as for running for office, that's the residency district. Any questions on that?
Will that affect the polling places then, Mark?
Shouldn't affect that at all. So that's all I had.
Okay. Any further questions from Mark? Okay, thank you, Mark. Have a good Christmas if we don't see you before.
All right, thank you.
I have another comment whenever other matters comes up.
Okay, go ahead.
So in October, I came to you guys and asked you if we would considering increasing or changing the categorization for the CNAs at Golden Meadows. And I was asked to get fringe benefit information for that group. I reached out to all of the other county homes, their administrators and their HR folks, and I did not get any responses. So I don't have any information to give to you guys. And hopefully we can make some adjustments with the system that we have now to accomplish what we're trying to get accomplished. I don't have the paperwork I need, but just as an FYI, I will be coming back in January to discuss that with the right paperwork and hopefully get a change on that, because I can't force somebody to give me a response to my email. So I was not able to get that information that you guys were looking for, even though I asked for it.
Can you get us whatever before the council meeting next month? So
Yes.
we have time to look at it and dissect it or understand it?
Yes, I
Instead
can
of
send
just
you the
for the
wages,
moment?
the wage information that I have, not like I did in October, I'll do better. But I was not able to get any benefits information out of any other of the county homes, their HR people or administrators, so just FYI.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Okay. Anything else, Tony?
There was something that just slipped from my mind. Oh, you should all have in your emails now the deadlines that we have this year from DLGF. That we were talking about. I have re-looked it up on the DLG website, and those were the deadline dates for 2021. I don't know that they would differ a lot year to year. I think they're normally the same, but that is just for your information to look at for your benefit as we go into next year. So I'll let you know. That's, yeah.
Okay. Anything else we need to discuss? Okay, I would seek a motion to adjourn.
Move that we adjourn.
Dennis?
Second.
And John? Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Have a good Christmas. Have a safe New Year's, and we'll see you in
We got
January.
anything